Good morning to everyone. My name is Vipul Jain, and while I'm from the tech sector, also the co-founder of CSA, Catalyst for Social Action. And it's really my great pleasure to welcome you all today and particularly welcome the great panelists that we have to what I think will be a very interesting dialogue around the area that we are all so passionate about, and that is care for children in need of care and protection. Let me start by quickly introducing our panelists. So we have Dr. Nilima Mehta. Dr. Mehta, I don't think she needs much of an introduction, but still, she has done very extensive work in the area of child rights, child protection, family-based alternative care. She's a family counselor and physiotherapist. She has a doctorate in child protection and has been working in this area for over 40 years. She has been amongst one of those stalwarts that the government always leans on when it comes to uh, the uh, the policy making that they are doing. So she has been part on the JJ Act Review Committee, the Adoption Advisory Committee, and many, many more such initiatives. She's also a chair professor at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. So welcome, Nilima ji. Very nice to have you for today. Then we turn to Priti Patkar. She's the founder and executive secretary of Prerana. She got her bachelor's at Nirmala Niketan College and master's from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. In the year 1986, she, along with her husband, Dr. Patkar, began Prerana. And Prerana conceptualized the whole concept of night care centers for children living in red light areas. Over the years, she has been on the forefront of many, many different initiatives uh, dealing with underprivileged women and children, and of course, in particular, children in need of care and protection. Then we have Dr. Archina Dhar. Dr. Archina has over 25 years of experience working in the development sector and 19 years of which with the SOS Children's Village of India. I don't think SOS Children's Village of India requires any introduction. It has been amongst, I would say, one of the role models of how children can be managed in an institutional setting and yet provided very a lot of emotional support and support all the way till they become contributing members of society. At SOS, Dr. Archana heads program Quality and Impact. And since this is one of our major topics today, we are really delighted to have Dr. Archana with us today. Then we have Dr. Smita Dharmamer. Smita leads various initiatives, particularly in community-based child protection in Aangan's programmatic work in Mumbai, Maharashtra. From 2005, she gave up her career as a practicing homeopath to work in the social sector, joined Aangan in 2006, and has really been one of the ladies behind the success and the work of Aangan. Smita received the prestigious Rex Karmavir Global Fellowship Award, which recognizes her passionate commitment to safeguarding vulnerable children's rights to safety, protection, and development. Very nice to have you with us, Smita. And last but not least, we have got Satyajeet Mazumdar. Satyajeet heads up Advocacy at CSA. He has over 9 years of experience working with nonprofits in various capacities. He has a degree in law from the Gujarat National Law University and is pursuing a postgraduate diploma in child rights from the National Law School of India. So, what a great panel. Thank you all for sparing the time to be with us today. Today, what we are going to talk about is really about, as a system, how do we take care of children in need of care and protection? So in this seminar, we thought we'd step back for a moment and look at the entire system as a whole, right? How do we identify vulnerable children? Once they're identified, what are the processes, right, that are used to take the decisions? What is the alternative methods of rehabilitation? And in particular, institutional care, where does that fit in, right? And how can we, what measures, what challenges are faced by people and practitioners on the field? And what can we do to make the entire system far more caring, far more child-centric, and to be able to provide the rights that our children in need of care and protection deserve and require. So that's going to be what we are going to talk about today. At CSA over the last 6 months, we have been working on researching and writing up a paper to cover this entire
Vipul has a network issue, I think. Yes, Vipul.
He's on mute.
sorry, my connection dropped, I think. So we felt that particularly since the pandemic, maybe a little before that, somewhere there is a conversation that is taking place, which is taking a sort of one-sided view, right, about institutional care. Of course, in the media, the news that you hear about institutional care are the ones that are typically the bad news, right? Some incident happens somewhere, and of course, the media picks it up, and quite rightly, everybody is talking about all the dangers that children may face while they are in institutional care. Yes, but then there are so many good things that are happening, right? And somewhere that part of the that side of things gets lost. And during the pandemic, we have seen uh, a large number of children who have been sent home or restored with their parents. Okay, and what we are not sure about is whether this was done uh, following the right processes. All right, whether it was in the best interest of the child, and where they are today. Are they better off being back with their family, or were they better off in institutional care? Right? And since these are very important topics to understand, to debate, to converse, we thought at CSA, let's make a start by researching this area and doing up a paper that we would very widely disseminate and circulate, and hopefully kickstart a conversation amongst all of us and try to come to some consensus on what should be the main areas of focus for us as a country so that we can provide better care for our children in need of care and protection. So I'm going to ask Satyajeet, right, who has authored the paper, to share with us what have been our findings and our main conclusions and recommendations out of this research work that we have done over the last 6 months. Satyajeet, over to you.
Thank you, Vipul. Good morning, all participants and panelists. As Vipul shared, over the last 6 months, we have been working at CSA. We have been working on a paper, on a white paper that we thought would capture the present scenario of children in need of care and protection, the laws around it, and what could be the way forward. And this paper has been co-authored by Vipul and myself. So I will share, I have a small PPT to share, which I'll do so right now. Yeah. So the paper is called Institutional Care for Vulnerable Children, the Law, Present Scenario and Way Ahead. And as Vipul mentioned, we will be circulating this paper widely and definitely amongst all participants in this webinar. So so the background of this paper, I'll start with the background. So what we see at present data wise in our country is that close to 40% of the total number of children in India are said to be vulnerable or experiencing difficult circumstances. This is what the MWCD, Ministry of Women and Child Development, has said in its 2015 report. Now, the 2011 census said close to 10 million children between 5 to 14 years of age are victims of child labor. We have had the UNICEF in a report in 2018 said 1.5 million children in India are victims of child marriage. And in 2016, the UNICEF State of the World's Children report said close to 30 million children in India are orphans. Now, taking all these figures together, we created an estimate that close to 20 million children in India can be estimated to be in need of care and protection as per the definitions in the Juvenile Justice Act. And around this, what is the legal system that we have? We have a Constitution of India, which definitely provides certain rights to children. We most importantly, we have the Juvenile Justice Act and the model rules. And it establishes bodies responsible for care and protection. It defines the systems and processes, and of course, there's a UNCRC to which India is a signatory. Now, what we see is that we have I mean, we can call it a robust legal system. We have well-defined processes. We have bodies which are responsible and are supposed to take care of children in need of care and protection. Moving forward, I will speak about the four major assertions that we have made in this paper, and I will speak in detail about each of these. The first one is that we need to have a minimum holding capacity of CCIs that needs to be maintained. What is it about? I will speak about it in the following slides. We say that institutional care needs to coexist with family-based care. We say that CCIs, when adequately supported, can provide family-like care. And finally, what we are saying in this paper is that deinstitutionalization driven by targets can be harmful. So I will go over each of these in the next few slides. So when we say holding capacity, the minimum holding capacity of CCIs needs to be maintained. What do we mean by that? We all know that children come into a childcare institution. They are placed in a childcare institution by the CWC, either for short-term, medium-term, or long-term care. Children who come in for short-term care are usually those who are lost, who are run away, who are just waiting to be for the family to come and pick them up. Then there are children who are there for medium-term care. So this could be anywhere between 2, 3, 4 years. So when there's a situation in the family, when there is some incident in the family, or the child is a victim of child labor or child abuse, then that child may need to be placed in an institution for a certain period of time until the situation in the family improves and the child can be sent back, restored with the family. And finally, we have long-term care. These are children who are probably abandoned, surrendered, and who have not been able to be placed with a family for any reason. So these children probably would continue in a CCI till they are 18. So these are the different types of children who come into an institution. We saw in the previous slide that we are making an estimate that there are at least 20 million vulnerable children in India. And right now, if you look at the 2018 Ministry of Women and Child Development report, we believe there is space for close to 4 lakh children in CCIs, which is just about 2%. How do I make that estimate? We have anywhere between 7,000 to 9,000 CCIs in the country. So in 2018, MWCD said there are 9,000 institutions, and recently the NCPCR said there are close to 7,000 institutions. If we take an average of say 50 children per institution, we can say that we have capacity for 4 lakh children. Now, we believe that if we are catering to just 2%, if we have space for just 2% children in a CCA, I mean, 2% children to be placed in institutional care, and if we see that there are so many children who could probably be in vulnerable situations, and the movement always happens in and out, we believe that this minimum 2% holding capacity should be maintained so as to accommodate children for varying durations, and this will be required in the near future. So that is the first assertion that we are making. Next, we are saying that institutional care and family-based care need to coexist. Why do we say that? We know that the best interest of the child is paramount. So there will be while there are children who would who we would be able to restore back with their family, there will always be children who would need institutional care, and this would need to be decided on a case-to-case basis. We know that adoption and foster care are great options, but the numbers are quite limited as of now. So considering all this, and then we also see that there could be many children whose family situation itself puts them at risk, or who the system is yet to reach out to. So that is why we say that institutional care needs to coexist with the family. And I mean, going by the first assessment that we made, that minimum capacity needs to be maintained, and we need a solution which fits the requirement of our country, the situation of the country, the circumstances of the country, the socio-economic situation of our country. We need a solution which fits that. And that's why I say these need to coexist. Next, we say that CCIs can provide family-like care with adequate support, and this is something which we have realized from our work with institutions. Catalyst for Social Action has been working with CCIs in 4 states. We work with close to 90 CCIs at present, and we see that most CCIs have the right intent, but they suffer because of lack of funding. They sometimes, and lack of funding is somewhere related to lack of skills and knowledge. They are not able to invest in capacity of their staff. There is a negative public perception and excessive scrutiny. So these are probably the reasons why CCIs suffer, although they have the right intent. Now, 88, again, the data in in the few reports that I referred to suggests that 88% CCIs are run by private NGOs, whereas only 45% receive some form of funding from the government. And even this funding is, it usually comes as a reimbursement, and it is never predictable. What you will get in the next year, it is usually not predictable, and this causes a lot of confusion for the CCIs. And so we say that from our experience, we can say that with funding and with knowledge support, CCIs can provide family-like care, and we believe that the government funding should be made available to all registered CCIs, and outcomes should be measured in a standardized format, so that we can track the improvement of quality care in the CCI. And finally, deinstitutionalization driven by targets can be harmful. We know that the number of children in CCI's institutional care has come down drastically over the last 3 years. In 2018, the number that came out of the survey of the Jaina committee report was close to 3.7 lakh. And whereas very recently, last year, the NCPCR did a social audit and came to the figure of around 2.5 lakh. And then again, in the month of November, in the midst of the pandemic, we got to know that almost 1.5 lakh children have been sent back. So, and then there was, of course, this NCPCR letter to 8 states, which created a buzz. And there is a school of thought which believes that unless CCIs are shut down, family-based care would not pick up. So we believe, being hasty with this process, being not being thoughtful with the process of deinstitutionalization can actually be harmful for the children. We believe that the shift needs to be gradual and thoughtful and connected with the ground realities. Do we actually have the systems of monitoring and support at the ground? And the outcomes of DI need to be studied. The outcomes of deinstitutionalization, these children that have been sent back in the last 1 or 2 years, what has been the outcome of deinstitutionalization? That needs to be studied before taking such decisions in the future. Finally, these are a few recommendations. We believe that we need to increase vulnerability mapping, because there are many children out there, many families out there who need support, and this needs to be carried out extensively so that we can get those children and families in the purview of care. Better gatekeeping at entry and exit points of institutional care. Any child for whom family care can be provided should not be institutionalized. Any child for whom it is not in the best interest to be restored with a family should not be deinstitutionalized. We believe CCIs need to be strengthened. Family-based care options need to be promoted. The awareness regarding adoption, foster care, etc., needs to be created. The government needs to publicize these schemes even more, and community-based capacity of community-based care needs to be built. Data is already spoke about that. Data in standardized format should drive oversight of CCIs and policy decisions. Our decisions should be based on the data that we have. Government funding should be made more transparent to CCIs and data driven. And of course, aftercare is something that needs greater focus. Children who are leaving the institution on turning 18, care leavers, they need to be supported. So these are a few recommendations that we have in the paper. I invite all of you to please go through the paper in detail. The paper will be sent to you after this webinar, and I hope to get feedback and your comments on the same. Thank you. Vipul, you are muted.
Just to add to what Satyajeet is saying, I'm an engineer, so when I when I look at the system, I think about this reservoir of children out there. All right, and a few of them get identified. Right, you can think like a funnel from that reservoir. A few of them get identified by frontline workers, by citizens, by childline, etc. And these are the ones that come to that entry wall, right? You think about CWC as some sort of an entry wall. They're the ones who uh, look at each case file and take a decision. And then those children who cannot be immediately, whose situation requires them to be moved out of the family situation, they go into these holding tanks. So if you think about childcare institutions as holding tanks, then you do need holding tanks, right? And in the holding tanks, the children, of course, they could be there just for a few days, they could be here for months or for years, and they should exit, right? A review needs to be done of all the children. And then again, you have the exit wall, right? Which is back to the CWC and the whole process around deinstitutionalization. And from that, when they exit, they should be restored back to the family, and or at the time when they turn 18. And at that time, hopefully, they don't join the pool of vulnerable families, but are in a much better state, right? And able to stand on their own feet, and the family restoration can be done, right? So this is what the entire system is, right? And I think what's really, I would say, a little disturbing, right, is the fact that somewhere we are not recognizing maybe the role and the importance of childcare institutions, the fact that we need these holding tanks, right? And even as we build up our capabilities in alternative and family-based care, does it really mean that one is at the cost of the other? One is or is an alternative to the other, right? At least we don't think so, right? We think both are required. And the real focus needs to be upon the quality at each of these steps. So the quality of how do we improve vulnerability mapping? How do we take that exit and entry decision? How do we come to better quality decisions? How do we have better quality and outcomes if children are in institutions? How do we have better quality and outcomes if they're restored back with their families? How do we make sure those children do not again be in a situation where they need care and protection? And how do we ensure better outcomes in aftercare? Because a little bit of support at that stage can be life changing for those young adults, and we can really break that whole cycle of broken homes and poverty and so on and so forth, right? So the real focus is not one against another. Our country is too large. The number of children that we have are just too large. Our situations around poverty, child labor, the empowerment of women, right, leaves so much to be desired that we must look at pragmatic solutions, even as we may continue to strengthen all aspects of our systems, right? So this in a nutshell is what we have tried to put down, or has been the outcome of the research that we have done. So let's take this as a bit of a context to have a bit of a discussion. So I'm going to start with Priti ji. So Priti ji, a little bit about your perspective around this whole topic, and maybe some suggestions on what you think we should be doing.
Thank you very much for inviting me on this panel. And of course, it's an absolute honor to be on this panel with such amazing people. I've learned a lot about the juvenile justice system from Dr. Nilima Mehta. So definitely, absolutely feeling honored to be part of this panel. And of course, all the other colleagues. My take, I strongly feel, it is important for us to have, and when I say us, I feel all of us, be it in the voluntary sector, be it other duty bearers, to have a very holistic, deeper, proper and comprehensive understanding of the definition of children in need of care and protection. I think somewhere that is lacking. Okay, we just randomly call any child a child in need of care and protection, so that needs to really get deeper. The second question that we all need to, be it the voluntary sector organizations, be it the childcare institutions and other duty bearers, the question we need to constantly ask ourselves is, do all CNCP children who come in front of the CWC or are not produced in front of the CWC require institutional care? Should they be admitted into children's home or, such facilities? I feel children, without a home, without any ostensible means of subsistence, who reside with people who've been injured or likely to injure a child, exploit a child, neglect a child, where we know the parents have been unfit and incapacitated, like my area of work, traffic children, traffic for sex trade, where we know the parents were linked to the entire trafficking process, or children who've experienced sexual abuse or sold into beggary. Here, somewhere when we know the parents were unfit or incapacitated, I understand the need for such children to be immediately referred to institutional care. But in other cases, I feel there is a need, you rightly use the word gatekeeping. The CWC can and should do the task of gatekeeping. So let them do an assessment. We have the DCPU in place. We have voluntary organizations in place. Just speaking to the child, very often it's the adult referring the child to the JJ system, and we don't hear We don't have the time to listen to children as to what do they want at the end of it. And I think depending on all the, after considering all this, institution as an option for the child, I think a decision should be made. The other thing is, no child in CNCP is ever, you don't presume once the child is a CNCP, he will stay a CNCP child forever. This also understanding, I think, somewhere needs to be worked on. Very often we find children in CCIs once, Satyajeet spoke about long-term care and up to 18. Why do we presume that a child once into the system will stay till he or she turns 18? The problem is there is no assessment happening. The second is we flush out children whom we don't want. That child probably needs institutional care the more, but is so-called, not adjusting. And in the language that I always hear is he's the troublemaker. Now, these are children who are flushed out of the system, who actually need the system. Then are we doing care plans? Are SIRs in place? Are we listening to other people, other stakeholders, through which I feel competent authorities can make on a regular basis an assessment of whether the child should be in an institutional setting. My last point is, we've worked with children who've been, I use the word, pushed into institutional care. These are children who have experienced trauma because of sexual abuse, sexual exploitation that they have experienced. And institutional care does not help in their healing and recovery. It actually adds to their trauma. Have we, somewhere we need to also discuss this and consider this. What is important is that, we should not have this one size fit for all. It has to be on a case-to-case basis. And also remember, we use this term best interest of child so loosely without understanding that best interest of every child is going to be different. So I'm going to stop here, and thanks for asking me that question. Vipul, we can't hear you.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think what you mentioned, right, about the role of the CWC in both entry, exit, and as you said, that once a child enters, this situation may change. So continuously being able to review and seeing, right, if the situation has changed, the risk factors have gone away, right, then can the child be restored back? I think that's a very, very important process to do. So thank you for bringing that. I'm now going to turn to Dr. Nilima Mehta. She has been working in this area at multiple levels. So it will be very interesting to hear her perspective.
Thank you. As would like to begin by saying that it's such a privilege to be here to ideate together, to discuss and to dialogue on such a special subject of child protection, both close to my head and my heart. I don't know what I would have done if I was not in this field. So this is my ikigai, and this is my passion and my profession. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to be here together to make a difference in the life of children, and to see that from the shoulds, how do we reach the dids? That from should to did is really a journey that we are here to ideate together. So my learnings are based on my 40 years of work in this domain of child protection. And out of these 6 years in the Child Welfare Committee, the first Child Welfare Committee in the country in Bombay at Umarkadi, and that was a tremendous enrichment and a tremendous learning that I would like to share, that my learnings are really based on that, and it has been the most rewarding work in my years of work. So in the space of child protection, I have 5 major learnings that I'd like to share with you. As Mr. Vipul Jain said, the systemic processes and to contextualize it to a larger process is very important. So my first learning or sharing that I'd like to do is to see it as continuum of care for child protection, whether children in vulnerable situations, children in need of care and protection, children in conflict with law, whoever we look at, we're really looking at continuum of care, which starts with the birth family, biological family, family strengthening, family-based alternatives, and in the continuum of care, institutional care as a last alternative, and not as either or pitching one against the other, as you said. So that's the continuum of care we have to see. The second one is the simultaneous intervention that we need for quality care in childcare institutions. It's not sequential, it's not one after the other, it's not alternate, but it's alternative. So the word alternative says that simultaneously we are looking at what is the best, which intervention strategy is best for every child. And like Priti said, that one size doesn't fit all, but let's do it need-based for every child. So that has been one of my major learnings. One of the things that we did a lot of policy research before we did this work at the international level was on the negative impact of institutional care. The best of institutions, which are large and impersonal, as it was a couple of years ago, were what they developed an institutional child syndrome, which I will discuss later. So the third one is improving quality of childcare and the negative impact of residential care. The fourth point for me is the learnings that came out of Child Welfare Committee work. As a quasi-judicial body, the kind of responsibilities, actually the kind of role that they had to play was inventing the wheel at that point of time, because there was a juvenile welfare board that transitioned into a child welfare committee, and the whole approach to child protection was a paradigm shift in the way we looked at children. And that's when we realized that unless there is a cognitive shift, attitudinal change, and perspective building in relation to children, we will not be able to impact children in a positive way. And my last learning that I did is you cannot work in isolation. That networking, teamwork with allied systems, and intersectoral collaboration are the critical foundations, critical necessities in working with children. So these have been my 5 learnings. I will just quickly go on to each one to share what I learned and how important it is for us, so that there is no polarization, but there is inclusion in the way we look at children. So they coexist, residential institutional care and family-based alternatives. It's not either or, they really coexist. And as Satyajeet shared as part of your paper and the white paper, I must congratulate that this is the need of the time for us to put together a concept note on what we mean by childcare. So I would rather look at it as a document that looks at child protection from a multi-perspective, multi-spectrum family-based alternatives. So family strengthening is the first, which looks at sponsorship and counseling. If we translate the ideology into programming, then it will be sponsorship and counseling for family strengthening. The second is family-based alternative, which will look at foster care, kinship care, technically fit persons by the Child Welfare Committee. All of these would be the continuum of care for a family-based alternative. And the third, which is the last option and non-negotiably the last option, is the what we call care in a shelter home, care in a residential institution, or a childcare institution. And while we do that, we focus on the quality care, because a lot of the caregiving reaches a burnout where we need to address the issues, all of us will give our 2 pieces of wisdom and say, do this, ye karna chahiye, do this, shoulds, all the shoulds that we go with, and the team that our caregivers on the ground have shared. Ek din aap yahan rehkar dekhiye, and all your shoulds will be then something that we are all living every day. So I have great respect and a great empathetic attitude for caregivers who on the ground are looking at the reality of what we develop in terms of policy, programming, legislations, and things. So for me, the second understanding of why institutional care as a last option is that transitioning from large impersonal institutions to small SOS model or cottage system model or with individual caregiver model is very necessary, because we studied what is called the institutional child syndrome. So research has shown that there are 5 concepts of multiple mothering. There is routinization and regimentation, the individual anonymity, individual care and lack of individual identity. What is called anonymization is what leads to a child not having a sense of identity or self-esteem. Then the issues of bonding and attachment leave behind what we call long-term trauma, and this trauma-based understanding or informed care becomes a big challenge for us. At Child Welfare Committee, this has been my major learning, that traumas and abuse, physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, whatever kind of trauma, even verbal trauma, is unbelievable how, a child is called, us gade ko bulao, Bila number 212 ko bulao. It has stayed in my mind to say, where is our child-centric system? Where is our best interest of the child? And where is our child-friendly approach in the work we do? So for me, the Child Welfare Committee learning has been so profound that as a statutory body, the organization, the Child Welfare Committee, which is quasi-judicial body, has so much authority, responsibility to ensure what we call the best interest of the child. The areas in which Child Welfare Committee really addresses is, first is called prevention, which is gatekeeping. The gatekeeping means with the DCPU, the District Child Protection Unit, and the Child Welfare Committee, ensuring that the child comes into the juvenile system only if it's absolutely essential, mandatory. Then the second one is the response. The Integrated Child Protection Scheme, during that time, tells us how the social investigation report, the home study report, the individual care plan is the response that CWC needs to order to ensure that we are taking the right call. Restoration, repatriation, and integration is the next focus of the Child Welfare Committee. Mainstreaming into society is the eventual outcome that we are expecting, so that child is facilitated into becoming part of a social system of the larger society. And the developmental aspects of quality institutional care, alternatives, and family type childcare institutions is the last thing that Child Welfare Committee can look at. My fourth point was about the role of CWC in the context of working with civil society organizations. It cannot work in isolation. It cannot exercise its power as a hierarchical role and say that, look, we have the authority, we have the power. And so this high-handed attitude that many people have experienced, shared, witnessed, is something that we really need to look at through training, capacity building, and role understanding about coordination, cooperation, collaboration between civil society organizations, INGOs, international organizations that may do the funding, the NGOs in our country, the government, the networks, and the whole various systems within the government, which is the Integrated Child Protection Scheme, the Department of Women and Child Development, Department of Social Welfare, and all of this to work together with various departments with a holistic and integrated approach as a systems approach, not fragmented and isolation. So this training, capacity building, empathetic approach, and to address the burnout situations through innovative practices has become the most important thing ever. So what do I say when I conclude? When I conclude, I wanted to say that the knowledge, attitude, and skills that are required to address the whole issue of child protection and safe childhood is an ideological paradigm shift. Very, very important that the need-based framework to a rights-based framework. Every child has an entitlement. The child doesn't only have a need, but we need to move from this needs-based approach to a rights-based framework. That vulnerability is an outcome. Vulnerability is a symptom of caste, class, gender, patriarchy, disability, poverty, discrimination within the system that leads to vulnerability. So till we look at the root causes and we address those issues, the invisibility of the child, the urban-rural continuum that we need to look at is absolutely essential. So I'd like to conclude by saying, let's not leave any child out of the safety net. Let us commit ourselves to zero tolerance to violence of all kinds. And together for the child, let's dovetail all our efforts to move forward in the best interest of the child. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilima ji. What a nice note to summarize your discussion. Let's all work together. Let's dovetail our efforts. Let's take a very holistic approach and let's think about an attitudinal change from a need-based to a very child-centric and right-based approach. So thank you. So I'm now going to move to Dr. Archina. And Dr. Archina, the question I think that many of us would have for you, right, is, how at SOS Children's Village, the focus of the model has been to provide a family-like atmosphere to the child. Right? So can you tell us a little bit about that and what has been the experience of SOS Children's Village? And of course, the corollary to that is how can other institutions also follow a similar model? So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vipul, and thank you for inviting me to this very esteemed panel, and Nilima and Priti and even Smita. I know them very well, and be glad to be part of this panel. So Priti and Nilima have really talked a lot, and I won't be repeating that. But the one that I want to focus on is, and I agree, that family is the best resort for any child. So therefore, all efforts on strengthening the family so that the child can be kept in the family, biological family atmosphere is one that we strive for. And in SOS Children's Villages, that is all we also work on. So it's not just the Children's Village model for which we are famous. We also offer to the children, vulnerable child, a basket of care solutions for their varied needs. So if a child comes to us, our gatekeeping is very stringent. And if the child wants kinship care, we also implement kinship care. If the child wants, for short-term care, we have a short-term care program. We also, and children who do not have anybody else to look after them come into our SOS Children's Village, the family-like care program. Just to add, just to take the audience back to 2015 and the Juvenile Justice Act, an amendment was done, and it was rigorous advocacy efforts of SOS India, wherein a new category of care was introduced, which was the group foster care. And that is currently under Section 44 of the JJ Act, and interestingly under the larger umbrella of foster care. Now, having said that, we made our efforts to get, we are now 32 children's villages across 22 states, and we have got recognition in about 27 places under the group foster care. And how the Act describes the group foster care is it's a family-like care facility for children without parental care, aiming on providing personalized care and fostering a sense of belonging and identity through family-like and community-based solutions. And we put this definition into practice in our children's villages. So what we do is, essentially a SOS Children's Village constitutes about 12 to 14 SOS families living in a home. Each family has a single home, and the caregiver and the child ratio is 8 children to one caregiver who is a trained professional for 2 years. We train this caregiver, and she assumes the role of a SOS mother to these children. Each child gets an individual child care program, and it is done with participation of the SOS mother, the child, and the administrative staff, and it is done in the spirit in which it was made. Like, it is reviewed quarterly. It is the progress of the child is tracked, and this becomes a very important live document in the life of the child, on which we base where is the future of the child going to be. And another important USP of the SOS Children's Village program is that we have a robust aftercare program. We look after children who come into our care after stringent gatekeeping till the age of 23. So we have a very structured youth care program, which looks at that any child who goes out of our care program has at least one employable skill, is computer literate, has got English speaking skills. And we work with our indicators, like the average salary should be 20,000 for 2020. That was the kind of indicators that we were looking at in terms of our children integrating into the society. And another aspect that Priti and both Nilima also pointed out, that all these children come to us with a lot of trauma. So we do a lot of activities with these children which address which help them overcome trauma and resilience. We have lots of modules made on that, and we do regular training of our caregivers as well as the children on that, and we ensure that this child becomes a whole person and is able to integrate into the society as a contributing member with the job, with the skills required. And another thing that I wanted to tell you is that that the individual talents of the children are fostered. So we have children who are also very good painters. We have children who have become, dancers in their careers. So individual talent is fostered, and it's not that one glove fits all. The individual childcare plan is taken up in that spirit. We have an MIM and tests we do to children in order to gauge the potentialities of these children. And we have a whole way of, structuring their career orientation and paths that they take in the future, in their future lives. And another important aspect which I wanted to bring to this whole thing is that we have a very robust child safeguarding policy and structures in place to address any child rights violation which happens. So there is a location level child protection committee. There is a national focal person on child protection who drives the agenda of any child right violations into the thing. And we have a toll-free number which the children can reach through for any kind of help that they need. So it's a system which looks at child protection in totality, and we look at the survival, the developmental, the safeguarding rights of the children who come into a care. And I just wanted to end my my talk on is that I think it's very important to get the third-party intervention into a program. For example, we have lots of donors, we have lots of sponsors whom do we reach out to and who give us funds to take care of these children. So our institutions or our care facilities are not shut facilities. They are open facilities, and these are not children, invisible children in institutions, but they are visible children living in SOS families. I think that is the transition that we want to make. We want to open these places up. Otherwise, they become hubs of child rights violations which nobody can reach to, and these children can't reach out to anybody in the external community. And I've seen lots of these children's homes and orphanages where lots of these things are happening. They're packed in unsafe and dirty surroundings, and they really do not have any sort of stimulation to sort of grow emotionally, spiritually, or even regular studies and have career options available to them. So I think those are the kind of childcare facilities we need to make available to children, and there should be a basket of care services and not just one option, which is where the children are invisible and they're not visible at all for their further growth. So on that note, I would like to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Archina ji. So I think we'll come back to this subject, that how do we take, at the end of the day, there are 7,000 or 8,000 or 9,000 children homes across the country. And I think we'll all agree that yes, they are required. So how does one take all of these homes and move them towards a model that is closer to the one that SOS Children's runs, right? Which, as you have mentioned, is takes a different approach and sort of provides a lot of the support and the emotional care that children need, right? Apart from looking at their end-to-end rehabilitation. So we'll come back to that. I'm now going to move to Dr. Smita. And Dr. Smita, tell us a little bit about the work that Aangan has been doing, and then a little bit about the alliance that has been created to work towards quality in institutional care.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. ये इंस्टीट्यूशन केयर की बात जब निकलती है तभी मुजफ्फरपुर की बात नहीं निकले तो सरप्राइज है, एसओएस की बात नहीं निकले तो सरप्राइज है. These are the two extremes we always talk when we have the institutional care talk. And ये मुजफ्फरपुर जैसे कानपुर हो गया, चेन्नई हो गया, और 3 महीने में और कोई चीज निकल के आ जाता है. So for that, what is the solution? One of the Satyajeet white paper, Vipul's white paper says, Nilima and Priti has been saying it, Archina also say, if the institutions are there, what is the assessment? How do you see the changing and the tracking? What is the pattern happening in the institution? How do you do it? So that's how we thought, like, let's come together. Like, you cannot work in isolation. So we have formed one alliance with CSA and Pratham, that is together for the quality institutional care, where we can see all the institutional care assessment is happening as per law, as per judicial requirement, where Jinnah committee always says there is no, only 23% of reports has been given back to the institution, and rest of the report of assessment is not there. So if the state gets the local data, hyper-local data, what is happening in this 3,000, 7,000 institution odd over there, what is per institution is happening, what is at the district level is happening, DCPUs knows, CWC knows to take action, state has a data or a information to know about it. How wonderful it is to track, how wonderful to see the changes or the problem which are occurring in the institution. So if that is there with them, I'll just share one screen. If the state has such kind of data, is why can you all see the screen? If this kind of data, if state gets, Like if there is a 4 times monitoring and they know the out of 100 what is the state scores, what are the priority issues are flagged per state, what is the district, each district has a score out of 100 percentages, how many at the glance at that moment happening in the government run home and what is the score. We know there are almost 90% homes are NGO run homes. So how they are doing it? If they are getting funds from the government, what is their ranking shows? How many are the children's home? What is their score? Observation homes, others home. At that moment, how many children are there in the state? How many staff is looking at it? How many are the rural or the sub-rural or the urban homes are there? If you get to know about that at the glance, it will be great to know for the state to take action. If the CCIs are there, how many CCIs and what are the priority issues are flagged? It is taking a little moment to load. Here you go. So what is the 100 out of 100 score is there? What are the parameters we are looking at? Are they covered everything? Are there exit where we never talk about it? What is the case management, individual care plan is happening, psychosocial care, how much the children are in institutions are getting a group counseling or an individual counseling. This is a cumulative score if they get it. Like you can see at the glance, the exit preparation is only 8% in whole state. If life skill vocational is always neglected, and we are talking about mainstreaming them, they come out and they don't have any kind of life skill. I think they are doing fairer on the nutrition. They are doing better job over there. What is the each institutional score is there, and if we can say the sanction capacity and actual occupancy, where the Satyajeet made one point, like each children are there only in at least 50 number of children should be in one home, and there are 3, 4, 10 children, and with pandemic they have even emptied the homes. With that care, what is the standard of care in that institution? If you need to know what is the district level trends that DCPO and CWC knows, how my district is faring on that, how many are the priority issues are there in each section, how it is doing it in management and staffing, in protection, in physical facilities, exit preparation, the health and nutrition. If I know how my district is doing, I will be able to take action. I'll be able to track. I can plan for my institutional for the better care. If I have to talk about the red flag issues, so these are the flagging issues. If I know if incidents of abuse addressed appropriately in CCI, only 43% is not doing it. If you can see, children are not responsible for cleaning, they are cleaning the toilet. So almost 82% institutions in the children are doing that. If I know it at glance of it, it will be, I can take action on it. So these are the some of the priority issues I can see it at a glance. It will be great for me to see if I'm working in group of homes or in the state or the district or the CWC, whoever I'm there, if it will be great to see this. What are my strengths? What are my better points? You know, like there are caretakers or the superintendents or the even a cook are doing great job. Who is looking at them? Who is understanding that they are doing with the passion? So how do you see the best practices in the institution? How do you measure that? How can we flag that one person's effort has made changes in that child's life? So what are the criteria are still needs to improvement? So at a glance, if I can see at my state this is happening, it will be great. And again, there are this criteria where if suppose I select partially happening, not happening, or fully happening, if I see if weekly meeting held and that there is an agenda with the staff and planning happening, so there is not happening, then do I know which institution this is not happening so that I can do the capacity building of those children, those staff? then they can be able to plan. Children's chore plan in group rotation. So if 19 institutions are not doing, can I help them to plan that out? Can I help the system strengthening by knowing hyperlocal data at that moment? And I can track it by repeated assessment. This is what, if I have this data, which is per institution also, it will be great. What is my institution doing at that moment? How it is faring? What are the priority issues? If I know in that also, to go into micro level, at that level, the superintendent can do the self-assessment. He can plan for this. He can take one section and he can make an improvement. So that in end of the 1 year, you can see really change in the score. You know how many red flags are there. Each section out of 10, how much they are doing it. How many staff sanction capacities at the glance. How many children capacity is there, and actually how yellows are actually present children in the institutions. What are the best practices they are doing, how much bonus point they have got. And this is again a high priority area where children are cleaning the toilet or medical checkup has not been done on 24. I don't have doctors, I don't have that much money, but at least I can make sure that the within 7 days or within networking, by doing that, I make the doctors on the board. I can see per what is actually happening in institution by knowing this. This is what, if I have this data, it will be great to work on it. It will be my baseline, it will be my midline. I can track changes, I can see the pattern, I can actually make the GR according to it, and I can make the changes in this. This is what I think a solution for one of the solution to strengthen the system, make the institution better, make the lives of the children better, and have an impact. When they go out with their care plan, with their report in place. That's what I think I'm talking about, and that is what we are as Alliance trying to do it, working with different sets of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. So I'll just add a little bit to what Smita spoke about and the Alliance. So, you know, in CSA, we don't run any institution ourselves. In fact, when we started CSA, we debated in the board, right? That let's start another home. We can provide very, very good quality care. Or should we not do that and actually work with existing institutions? And our thinking was very simple, that there are so many existing institutions, 9,000 in the country. And most of them are run by very well-intentioned people, right? So I think our way of having a maximum impact, we felt, was to work with these existing institutions and help them fill in the gaps. Why cannot every institution provide a certain good quality of care? I won't say that every institution will be able to get a 10 out of 10, but why can we not move where every institution is at least at a 6? And many of them are at a 7 or an 8 or an 8.5, right? So this is the work that we have been doing over more than a decade, right? And right now it's about 90 institutions that we are working across 4 states, right? So what do we do? What is our approach? Our approach is that when we go, we start with our work with a new institution. Our first step is to do a bit of due diligence. And the due diligence is largely focused about the intent, okay, the bhavna, the, the, the thought behind the trustees in running the institution. Because I think where there are good intentions and there is a will, you will always be ready to accept help, you will be open, and you will want to change and do better, right? And without that, that is the intent that we look for when we start selecting the institutions to work with. The next step that we do is a baseline analysis. And what Smita presented is in fact a very similar tool that we have in CSA, covering all of these base aspects to see their compliance with the JJ Act on one hand, and on the other hand, to get an assessment of where are they on all of these parameters, right, that that Smita ji talked about. After that, we design our program of intervention, where we take up a few high priority areas every year. The first focus is to see that their safety, physical facilities, hygiene, cleanliness, nutrition, health is well taken care of, right? That is the base foundation that every institution must be able to offer to every child that lives there. At the next step, we start looking at education, how are they providing education, how do we look at remedial education, how do we look at forming children committees, how do we do extracurricular programs, sports, recreation, so that the children start getting confidence and their own abilities, they start getting a voice of their own, and they start developing their potential. And then, of course, as the children get older, a lot of the focus is around preparing them for exit, providing them with skills and with education that will make a difference to them. So seeing that they pass class 10, how can they pass class 12, how can they get awareness of what job opportunities might be there, some digital literacy, spoken English, and so on and so forth. And then they flow into our aftercare program, right? Now, our experience has been, right, that it is possible. It is very much possible over a sustained engagement of maybe between 3, 4, 5 years to take an institution from where it is, right, and to substantially improve the level of outcomes and care that they have, right? And this we can only be able to say with commitment if we are able to measure the outcomes at every stage, right? So we have in CSA, like many institutions, many of us who are running institutions have developed methodologies to measure, to do a baseline, end line, look at the impact, identify areas for improvement. However, right now, all of us, CSA has its own methodology, some other institution will have its own methodology, and all of us would have put in the efforts to create those methodologies. But when we have different methodologies, how do we start to collate the data across institutions? How do we compare across institutions? How do we standardize those methodologies, right? And that is the challenge. And this is where the initiative between us, Aangan, and Pratham is to see how can we standardize, okay, the methodology, and then how can we put it together as a dashboard, not only for the institution, but also for the government authorities, all right, so that it becomes an ongoing assessment. It becomes something that, you don't have, it's an ongoing process, and you can see the improvements that are taking place, right? And of course, if we can also, if the government can link its funds,
Yeah.
right, and make the process very transparent that, okay, you have 20 children under the ICPS scheme, this is the funds you are entitled to, you will get this every month. And by the way, I'd like to see this improvement over the next 6 months, right? So if we can start thinking in a different way, then I'm sure the entire relationship between the CCIs and the government, instead of it being one of scrutiny and suspicion, right? It will become one of facilitation and enablement to get to better and better levels, right? And that's really the goal towards this. So thank you, Smita ji. I'm now going to throw the floor open to questions. So from the audience, I would request that if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll try and get some of these questions before the committee, before the panelists. So I'm going to, Satyajeet, if you can put up the last slide, right? The one of recommendations. So I'm going to the first, I think the first recommendation was really around vulnerability mapping and gatekeeping at entry and exit points, right? And we heard from Priti ji, and we heard, of course, from Nilima ji about the role of the CWC, the importance of this gatekeeping, the right SIR, the individual care plan, the right care being taken, and this becoming a continuous process, right? So I want to throw this open a little bit to the panel. How do we do this? We all see the need for this. We also know that at the ground reality, CWCs may not have the trained, people available to them to carry out a social investigation or a home study, etc., etc. So what are some recommendations that we can make to actually achieve a much better process right at this entry and exit process?
Can I share, Vipul?
Please, please.
Yeah. I think this was a very big challenge when we were working with the Child Welfare Committee, that, the magnitude of cases, magnitude of problem versus the resources available was so limited, human resources, manpower resources, financial resources, that it was a great idea that we kind of work together with the civil society organizations in that area, in that sector that they were working in, and took their assistance, took their resources, pulled it together to help the Child Welfare Committee to prepare social investigation report, child study report, home study report, so that we could converge and work together with efforts. So Juvenile Justice Act does provide for special officers to be appointed in individual cases, to be appointed on a case-by-case basis. So I think this opportunity to use that section of Juvenile Justice Act to appoint NGOs, civil society organizations as social investigative report with the DCPU's assistance was a win-win situation.
Very nice. Any other ideas on how, we as civil society can work with the CWC and DCPOs to strengthen their hands?
Can I step in?
Please.
So what is happening in Mumbai in two places, along with an organization called IJM, and of course the CWC was very, very, proactive here, was to set up help desks at the CWCs, to help families, to help child welfare, children's home staff, to help children who approach child welfare committees, to support them before they reach the CWC. So one is whether we can have these kind of help desks, especially, like Dr. Mehta just mentioned, in districts where the caseload is so high, Bombay city, suburban, Thana city, the caseload is so high that you find, the waiting period is so long. People have come in at 2 o'clock, they're waiting till 7 o'clock. Can something like this be done at the CWC? We're talking about child-friendly CWCs, but we are limiting it to only painting the walls of CWCs. We are not going beyond that. We need to see the practices. very often child-friendly is restricted to tokenism. And the most easiest thing is to paint walls and make them look like a pre-primary class. I don't have anything against that, but I think, it's the practice. I think it's okay if we don't have these friendly paintings, as long as people are friendly. There is, there's empathy. We are mindful of those who are approaching the CWCs. So that definitely, I would say, is a way forward. The other is convergence meetings. And Dr. Mehta, again, I think she wasn't just the first CWC chairperson or the first CWC, but she also brought in that, the culture of convergence, the importance of convergence, the importance to meet and listen to stakeholders. What we are doing is we don't want to listen to stakeholders. We have this power and we want to stay with that power. We don't want to work with people. And I'm not saying this with due respects to amazing CWC members, but we still have CWC members who just don't want to listen. They don't want to, they're so biased. They feel everybody has come with an agenda. And I feel it's good that people have come with an agenda. People are approaching and doing work with a purpose. I feel that has to be seen in a very positive light. So and there is provision both in the model rules as well as, the mandate of DCPUs in the law, the importance of convergence, regularly meeting, listening, and trying to, co-create, together solve and mitigate problems. We have a culture of pointing faults. We need to shift that to culture of resolving, culture of, collectively trying to find how do we fill these gaps. So I think convergence is the way forward, and we should try and meet. And, Dr. Mehta, the other thing I must tell you today, there are CWCs who do not want to work with civil societies in care plans, in home studies. They, again, they feel they are biased, they come with an agenda. So a lot of cases are pending because they insist on an SIR or home study done by DCPUs. And, we all know how DCPUs are overburdened with so many things put on their table as of today. So in such a situation, I feel, really every platform, people like us should talk about, working together, allyship, partnership, get out of this culture of working in silos and get out of this culture of, kissa kursi ka. It's there for a very limited period, make best use of it in the best interest of children. Let's support children and not be stuck with that crown on our head and that chair in front of us. Yeah.
जो आपने convergence की बात करी, it really, I think, strikes a chord because, I think at a district level, if we think about the CWC, the DPPOs, the child care institutions, those that are working in the family care space, alternative care space, aftercare, if we were just to meet once a month and just talk amongst ourselves about what we are doing, what challenges we are facing, the good things that have happened, there would be so much trust and openness, and that would unleash so much energy amongst everybody, right? So I really thank you for that suggestion. Somebody else would like to share around this whole area of gatekeeping, vulnerability mapping?
I wanted to talk about gatekeeping, but if there is time, that's all.
Okay.
If there's time.
So let's move on to the next area, which is about saying how do
I
we
think Dr. Archina was saying something. Vipul, sorry.
Archina,
yeah, I think I was just reiterating the fact that I think the CWC need to be oriented to this whole space. They are there, but in terms of I mean, the selection of the CWCs, their orientation, their training in order to be sensitive to this whole area of child protection. And also, it should not be that since the order is passed with us, what happens is we get flood of lot of children, then our capacity to hold them, and we don't want to turn out to be like any other institute which has got like capacity of 50 but have children like 100 there. So they need to be sensitized on a lot of different levels. I'm not saying all are like that, but whoever is like that can really be a problem area to be worked at, and their orientation and sensitization to this whole dimension of child protection needs to be there.
Dr. Archina ji, I would agree. My only thing is, I think we also need to be sensitized the other way. Sometimes I sometimes think that if I was to put myself into the shoes of a CWC chairperson, how would life be? And I would feel that there's a lot of responsibility that you have, all right, and everything comes down to you, and then the stakeholders, the institutions, all that they are working with, how do I look at them? So I think this trust, this working together, this convergence, right, that is really I think what will unleash a lot of barriers that exist today, right? And the ability to look at solutions jointly, right?
I agree.
The openness to say, "Aap mujhe sensitize kariye, aap bataiye, what do I need to do better?" Right? That openness is the lock, the key that will unlock a lot of these things.
I think I like that, looking at solutions jointly. I think that's a collaborative way of moving forward, because at the end of the day, after this order is passed, it is in the custody of the implementing organization, and that comes with a lot of responsibility. So you have to make that collaborative solution seeking right in the beginning in a collaborative fashion.
As
I would
part of
agree
the
with that.
culture, absolutely. So I'm going to move on a little bit to how can CCIs be strengthened, okay? And again, just to share our perspective, there are 9,000 odd CCIs across the country. Not all of them are registered. Of course, all of them should get registered under the JJ Act. But the reality is that they are in the metros, they're in the towns, and then they're in more rural places. And some of them are very capable, right? They have the ability to access funds, they have visibility, their management teams and the trustees are very capable people, right? And then you have a lot of CCIs that are really run based on good intentions, and very little else, right? They are, but they're required. They're doing a very important function, right? So how does one strengthen them? And at CSA, we have been working deliberately again with a lot of institutions that are that are weaker, right? That are in remote areas where they don't have that much access to funds, knowledge, capabilities. So again, some suggestions around how can we bring up the overall level, right, across the board for CCIs. So who would like to go there? Dr. Archana, what are some practices that you follow in SOS that you think can be scalable? They can be taken to other institutions, without too much change. What do you think are 2 or 3 things that can be taken to other institutions?
I think one is the child safeguarding, reporting, and responding mechanism, which is almost absent everywhere else. So, where does this child go? Doesn't have a phone, cannot leave the gate of the institution. So whom does he turn to in case it has happened? And believe me, it's not reported and recorded. For example, in our SOS Children's Villages, we have an incident register, we have a person by the name the child can go to, we have location level child protection committees, we have a format on which we capture the severity of the abuse in terms of mild, moderate, severe. We have a national focal person. So the children are very powerful I mean, more than the caregiver, the children are very powerful because they know they'll be heard. The response to any reported case is done in the turnaround time is very, very, it's defined for each kind of abuse. So I think that is very important, and that is extremely urgent to be done at the childcare institutions, which is, I think, missing. It's very sporadic way of dealing with that, but not as a programmatic way of dealing with it. That's one of the areas I think which needs to be done. And the individual childcare plan, it is filled, but if you see some of them, it is not done in the spirit that it needs to be done. It's not monitored in the spirit that it needs to be monitored for the outcomes of what this plan has on the life of a child. For us, when the child comes till the child's exit at 23, we know the whole path that the child will go through and the interventions required for that particular child. And we do that assessment on a regular basis. And at any given point of time, you can open the notebook and you can see what the child has done in his life and where he's headed for. So we are very output oriented and outcome oriented in our approach to childcare for each and every child who comes into our case. And I think that should be done at the CCI level. So you need to know, where is this child, who is this child, what is his name, where is he, how many children are coming. I know of places where children, in 1 month there are 20, in the other month they can be just 30, and very next month they can be back to 20. So where is the continuity? Where is the process? I think those kind of processes need to be got into institutions, and they need to open them up. It should not be a shut place. I think that's some of the things which we can do.
Any other, would any of the other panelists want to share a bit more, some more best practices?
Maybe I can step in. Can I?
Please.
So I think one good practice which can be scaled and which needs to be scaled is to understand that the minute the child enters the childcare institution, parallelly, simultaneously, we need to work on family strengthening. Very often family strengthening happens once the child is restored. That too, if there is a follow-up order given by the CWC. Otherwise, we do not have the culture of family strengthening. And I think that should happen from day one, to strengthen and to understand that this child will eventually be back in the family. The child eventually has to be restored back to the family. I also think moving forward, all of us, even we run a very small childcare institution. I think all of us should be prepared to see our childcare institution just as a stopgap arrangement for the child, and not as a long-term arrangement for the child. It was there in the past, and that's how we saw many children till they were 18 years. I think let's all be mentally prepared that in the coming future, we might have only those children who stay with us till 18 because they came late into the juvenile justice system. Not they came at 6 years, at the age of 6, and they continued till the age of 18. The third is, the pandemic also taught us, and this is one question that we asked ourselves, is where did we go wrong? Why is it that so many youth care leavers came back to childcare institutions, to NGOs asking for help, which means we didn't work on independent living skills at all. And I think that needs to be scaled up. Even if the child is with you for 5 days or 6 months, we need to work on the independent living skills of the children. I think somewhere we are creating a lot of dependency among children and families on NGOs and childcare institution. I think we should be there for them. But the principle of self-determination is something we've totally forgotten. Be it a child in the childcare institution, be it our communities, somewhere we need to work around that, and we need to get our communities and clients to appreciate the whole principle of self-determination. So scaling independent living skills is something, and don't think independent living skills is only for grown-up children. We have worked with childcare institutions saying even a 1-year-old child, how you can work around that 1-year-old child's independent living skills. Age appropriate independent living skills is something that, moving forward, we have to work on. And somewhere, last point, I think childcare institutions should now start thinking as to how they can use their setup. They have such a big setup. How can they start using it to strengthen communities around them? How can they start using their infrastructure for non-institutional services? We feel we set this up, we have this building for an institutional care, but now slowly start converting these big setups that we have into non-institutional services. Offer counseling services, have sponsorship, have daycare centers. Prerana's own example of starting night care center, we have covered over 5,000 plus children through our night care centers. And believe me, not a single child covered under our night care center till date has become a child, got into the category of child in conflict with law. Very minimal children wanting institutional care. They are so happy with a community based in the community where the mother is in touch with the child. And that setup helps you to strengthen the family. In our case, of course, the mother and the child is the family, but it definitely helps. We've had such great examples of mobile creches, SOS villages, which also has a very robust community intervention. We have rainbow homes. We have, Nirmala Niketan College of Social Work had this amazing program in Khardanda community called Nirmal Nivas, where they had daycare centers for children whose mothers were domestic maids. Can we have these kind of community centers, and can the current infrastructure of childcare institutions be used to reach out to the communities through these non-institutional services? I think I took more time, but thank you for hearing me and giving me this time. Thank you so much.
No,
Vipul and everybody, I need to leave. I have another meeting, so I might leave in 5 minutes. And again, thanking each one of you for giving me this opportunity and feeling so happy to be part of this amazing panel and this amazing discussion. So I might leave in 5 minutes. Thank you.
No, in fact, what I wanted to, just listening to what you have mentioned and what Archina ji has mentioned, I think it points out to some very important thing. That in our own institutions, we are following some best practices that we have discovered over a period of time, right? The question I would like to put to everybody is, can we start sharing these practices with our colleagues in this system? Just coming back to the work that CSA does, right? We don't run any institution ourselves. But let me tell you, when we go to institutions and start working with them, okay, we realize that they want to do better, but maybe they don't know how. Maybe they don't have the knowledge. Maybe they don't have the skills. And you can't preach to them. You have to show them, come, let's try out something. Let's see how it works, see the results. And then it becomes part of their normal practice and way of being. And all of these things, children's committees, there are many, many different ways that all of us have done to ensure safety of the child, empowering the child, making the child independent. So, one takeaway from this whole COVID situation, and certainly all these dialogues that we are having, is let's start working together amongst ourselves, within all our collectively, I think we have so much knowledge and so much to give, right? And if we started to make a deliberate effort to reach out and work with other people, I think we could make, the world would shift, right? So
Can I
I'm,
say something? Yeah.
please, Nilima ji.
Oh, yeah, I have, from all the wisdom that was just shared, I just feel that this conclusion thoughts that came to my mind, I would love to share. That what Priti said, we really need to repurpose our organizations, our modality for functioning, and our whole mindset about the way we work. So knowledge sharing platform, I think sharing of experiences as good practices rather than best, because it's a bit this thing to say we did have best practices, but good practices that we need to learn a lot, make them into standard operating procedures, like a handholding for organizations that really need handholding. And we are happy to provide this kind of be a knowledge bank or a knowledge sharing platform. I would really look at your alliance to see that. That's one. Look at inclusion and access as being very critical. We do not need to leave any child out of the safety net. So inclusion, mainstreaming, access are very critical points of the work we do. Develop a doable agenda. Today there were so many shoulds. This should be done, that we have recommendations for the government, for the civil society, for the INGOs, for everyone. We know what needs to be done, what should be done. Let's work at an doable agenda in terms of who will do what and by when. And that is our way forward. So thank you very much to CSA to provide this really opportunity for us to ideate together, to deliberate and discuss together on this very critical issue of vulnerable children. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilima ji. Satyajeet, would you like to just talk about how we could take this a little forward?
Yeah, so we will be I mean, a lot of these discussions that we had, the ideas that were shared, we have them in our paper already. And what we will do is we will circulate the paper with all panelists, and we will also circulate this with all the attendees. And what we want, so we want this to be a beginning for such dialogues, such learning to be shared between each other, so that we can, as a group, then propose certain changes. So I would request all of you to please go through the paper and come back to us with any suggestions, any feedback, and then we can have further discussion on this. Thank you.
So just to add to what Satyajeet is saying, I think in this paper we have tried to put, as you have seen, some recommendations, right? And try and look at the 6-7 things that would make the most difference to this entire system and process of making change in the way in the way we look at children in need of care and protection. Now, you will note as you read the paper, in each of these recommendations, the idea is that we should set up working groups, all right, focus groups, take each one of these, and as Dr. Nilima ji said, look at how each one of these things can be actioned. And of course, this has to be a collective exercise. It has to be driven by many different people. So I would really, as you go through the paper, for one, if you feel that in the big picture, right, in the strategic perspective, if there are some things missing, please let us know. If you feel that it's all right, please let us know. All right. And the next step would really be to take a few things and see how we can action some of them. Right. And of course, one start we have made, which is in this the Alliance for Quality Care, where we are looking at collecting data, standardizing the way in which data is collected at the CCI level, at the children level, and how that data can be used by multiple stakeholders. So a small beginning has been made in one area, but there are many other areas which, organizations will have to step up and work together and take it forward. So, so I think on that note, I just want to, if anybody has got any concluding comments before we bring a close to this seminar, please feel free to share.
I think people, we are already over time. I think we should.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much. I would like to thank the panelists. I'd like to thank all the participants. Let's continue to keep our dialogues going. Let each one of us as organizations take one thing and say, let me talk to 5 other people in my area, and let's start sharing. Let's start making convergence and sharing as the key theme for us as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.